I'm starting recording now, and here we go. With you today from the project team, as we have in the past, Merritt and from Moxie Consulting, John Roderberg from SEH, and myself from CDG. And I'll just say, as a team, I feel like we're very coordinated. We've been working together now pretty intensely over the last few weeks, even more than before, as we are working on the kind of the primary components of the plan and moving into next steps for the work. As always, I like to introduce the chat function here in your Zoom window. Bottom of the screen, there's a little balloon icon. If you click on that, it'll bring up this box, and you can type in a comment at any time. And if there's a question that you have and we don't get to it during the meeting, we get the transcript of the questions, and then we're able to get back to you with specific answers. And any questions that come up, this way we'll be able to keep track of that and be sure to be responsive to you. In terms of our agenda for today, as I mentioned, it might be a little bit full, so I've tried to break it up a little bit. First thing we already did, which was any updates from steering committee members. It sounded like no one had an update they wanted to share, but maybe now after this might be a second chance. Any news, anything new that you have learned about comprehensive planning, or any articles you've read, or any places you have visited recently that you think those are great examples for the work we're doing in Glencoe? Anybody? Don't be shy, please. And we're going by that 7-second rule. If nobody says anything within 7 seconds, they say that means no one wants to say anything. But John, did you want to say something? No. Okay. Never mind. I thought he did for a second. And I should be careful too, because I was thinking John Roderberg, but no, there's also John Petters with us today. So, okay. So the other item in our agenda for today is this conversation about format for the meeting. And, it's something that as we were starting the work and Corona was getting more and more problematic, we decided the best way to move forward is through an online meeting format. And I know we've had conversations internally about when or how to do it. A couple of meetings ago, we had a vote. We decided that we would stay online until this meeting, and that we would have a meeting again today to do that. So, we had some trouble with the technology at the last time, and I ended up sending you a survey. I will do the same right after this meeting so that we can have that conversation. But I just from different comments that I have received, I think that there's a lot of movement towards us meeting in person with you starting April 15th. That'll precipitate some changes with how we approach our meetings. Some of them have to do with, so I would be traveling to meet you, and so that we don't incur a very large expense in our meeting times. I would be the only one that would be driving to you to meet in person. John Roderberg, because of his work as your city engineer, is likely going to be in town as well, and may participate in person. Merritt, because we have to keep her budget available for some of the other really key housing and economic development tasks, might not be able to, because we were going to this online format. We invited Merritt to join here as well. But so the configuration of your consultant team will change a little bit for the meeting itself. But I will, if the group does decide to meet in person, I will be meeting in person with you and potentially with John as well. And for when there are specific conversations related to housing or economic development, we'll bring Merritt in so she can contribute her expertise to the plan. I just want to bring up another quick item. Last time when we were talking about a meeting, we noted that it was going to be very difficult to be able to have half of participants in person and half of participants online, because we didn't have, the city didn't have the technology set up at the time that was necessary to be able to conduct hybrid meetings. And so I'm going to ask Mark Larson from the city to speak up in a couple of minutes. But what I think can happen is, if we do decide to move to an in-person meeting, we would still be able to have an online participation option for those who may not feel comfortable meeting in person and being in a crowded room full of 30 people, all of us breathing and being very excited about the plan. And and maybe singing about it, which they say is terrible to do in a crowded room if you don't want to spread the corona. So there'll be an option to join online. It'll be available, for those of us who want to be prudent still, or who haven't had a chance to be vaccinated. And we want to always continue to offer that option for everyone, because we don't want people to not participate in the conversation because of health concerns. And many of us have friends, family, relatives who are in more vulnerable ages, and so we want to be respectful and make that option available. And now maybe I'll ask Mark if you can tell us a little bit of the details of kind of what technology, what you anticipate the technology setup on the city side might be, and the location where we may be meeting.
We'll more than likely be meeting in the ballroom, South Ballroom, where we have the technology available for the most part. The toughest part is sound, and we did have a remote speaker. We are looking at some additional speakers, so hopefully we can, hopefully the majority of people can join in person. I've got Twin City and Western here with about 30 people today doing some training. Barb and I just left a food shelf board of directors meeting, and I think we had about 12 people in that meeting. So I don't think there's as much concern, and we can socially distance, and we can have one person at a table if that's what we need. But Antonio and I have been talking about it, and we just feel, and I think we're going to get more participation within this group if we're in a live setting. So hopefully that's the route we go. And then if you do have to join remotely next month, if we are going to meet in person, you'll just have to contend with maybe some sound issues, but we'll do what we can to make those as good as possible.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. And related to the sound issues, I just want to tell everybody as well, Mark, the city did acquire some new equipment, some new microphones that are going to help improve that situation. And so if you're joining remotely, we haven't tested it yet, but we think you'll be able to hear very well. And we will go through that testing process ahead of the next scheduled meeting so that we can make improvements as needed and make sure that you can experience almost the full experience from the comfort of your home and with good snacks and all of that. So with that, so I'll send materials for the vote right after the meeting. We'll conduct it in the same way that we did before. You can comment anonymously, and I'll just send an update. And last time this was the split that we had. We'll use the same survey tool to get your comments, and I'll send that out tonight. So if you can comment today, if you can respond to the survey today, then I'll be able to summarize and send that out to everybody. Okay, with that was the logistics. Now I want to start a little bit on the community engagement side. Why do I want to do that when we have a wonderful guest in John Petters here with us today? Because the answers that we have received from the community engagement, I think are very relevant for kind of the approach and the information he will share with us. And it's a good introduction to this as well, because it's a snapshot of where we are in the process and what we have been learning. And so first of all, to provide an overview of participation, I know we are talking a lot about going to in-person meeting and virtual engagement. I should preface all of this by saying, we have done the engagement for this plan, all of it virtually, all of it electronically. It is about one of the most successful engagement efforts we've had in a comprehensive planning project. So I wanna just make sure to say that, to acknowledge that, and to thank everybody who has been a really wonderful part in getting the word out and getting people to participate. So to start, we have a project website, as you know. It was published towards the end of last year. We've had almost 1,000 unique visitors, meaning individuals with from different internet addresses, internet IP addresses. We've had almost 100 people visit, individuals, unique or different individuals visit in the last week. So this is in addition to the the people that have visited previously. Our total is almost 1,000 right now of different people coming to the website and accessing it for information. The wiki map, as you are familiar with, we've had 57 people register, and we have almost 130 comments that have been provided through that tool. And these, as you know, are place-specific comments. People zoom in and are able to place ideas or note issues, or just let us know what's going on and what they want as for the future of the community. The first survey, survey number 1, which already is closed, and I think we launched it in early February, I'm going to say, or well, I'm forgetting now. But we launched it. It was live for about 6 weeks. We had a total of almost 130 individuals participate, and this was a very simple survey. It had, what do you like the most about the city? What do you not like? What would you like to change? And what are your ideas for the future? We've received about 400 ideas and comments from the participants. And so this is information that is helping us to orient the work of the plan and the vision. And you can see when I say, over 300, I'm just counting these little slots, but each one of them has about sometimes 20 ideas in them. So there's a lot of ideas in the plan that, it's part of the work that we're doing, is digesting all of this information, which brings me to survey number 2. And this survey has been live for only about a week and a half. We had almost 300 respondents already in the first day, within 24 hours that we launched. And this was a wonderful coordination with the city, and I should say this, as you may know, Lynn Newman, Assistant City Administrator, has now left the city to accept a position with another community, but she did fantastic work in the plan, supporting our work, and she, working closely with Mark, put this out through the city's social media. We had 250 participants in 24 hours. We have received a ton of information already. 85 pages worth of ideas, comments, charts. And what I sent this to everybody on the steering committee earlier today, just an interim export. So this is not the final export of the plan, but just what we have up to date. And you can see how we're getting we're asking detailed questions about priorities and preferences, and that is the really nuts and bolts guidance that is helping us to think about new directions and kind of how to orient the work. So I have an ask for everybody. Please share survey number 2. Keep on doing that, because we want to, we think a reasonable goal is 500 people by the end of the month. This survey will close at the end of the month, because we need to bring, in some ways, we need to stop asking. It's like we're in a restaurant, and you have the waiter come to you, and they ask you what you want to order, and then they have to go into the kitchen and tell the cooks, tell the chef, this is what we're going to make. And so we have to we have to have the waiter go into the kitchen and start working with the cook and the chefs. We got to start baking the delicious pie, making that wonderful soup, that tasty roast. And so we're going to close the survey on end of the month, and then then we're going to work with that. And so if you can get us more ideas and more opinions now. That'll be super helpful and will get us to the best lunch possible, or dinner. It could also be dinner. It could be both. And we'll also have strategic engagement opportunities with, still throughout, but these are some of the key ones right now. I'm going to go over not the entire survey right now, but just some of the relevant portions that in some ways interact with the conversation that we're going to have with John in a minute. We start, what are the things that you like most about living in Glencoe? And you can see how results are tabulated. On the top of each of the bars is the percent of respondents. So 60% almost of respondents said, what I like the most about living in Glencoe is that it's a small town with convenient access to the Twin Cities. And when 212 gets converted to be 4 lanes the whole way, that convenient access is going to get more convenient. Affordability, friendly people, family-oriented, etc. What should the city's top priorities be? And in some ways, there was a surprise here, but there are 2 really interesting answers. Number 1, the surprise was, and we had heard a little bit about this in survey 1, broadband and internet service. There's a lot of issues going on related to that in the city. But the second one, which is something that you'll see in a lot of the other answers, improve the downtown by adding businesses and shopping. And that the distance between those first 2 and the next, so you can see 60% or so, and then the next highest priorities, are 40%. So quite a number of percentage points. I think the broadband issue is something that people it's acute right now because people are running into it with the need to be working remotely, etc. I think the downtown has come through very clearly in survey number 1 and now in this survey. And you can see the rest of them. This is in your package. I imagine that you haven't had a chance to read through it yet, so I just wanted to go through some highlights. How important do you think the following are to make Glencoe a more attractive place for young adults and new residents? This is a key question for us because one of the things that we shared with you at our last steering committee meeting is that there is some decline in overall population in downtown. We're getting loud and clear that we want to have more activity, more businesses. People want restaurants in the downtown. They want more of those amenities, but we can't have those amenities if we don't have more people coming into town and spending their money and investing in the community. And so these are key questions for us. What do they tell us? Number 1 response from participants is we need a lively downtown for shopping and recreation. That's, and there are other elements that of course are very important. We need to continue to have strong schools because that'll bring young families to the area. Investing in the schools is a great investment. Parks, more services, a trail system, etc. Now, this is a question that is towards the end of the survey, but I moved it up because it's especially specific to the conversation today and to the future of the city. How influential do you think each of these catalysts are going to be for the future of Glencoe? So what is going to stimulate, and you can see here in the brackets, what do you think will stimulate economic growth, land development? So what is going to make our city more prosperous? What is going to make it thrive? You can see the first and the most popular or most widely recognized answer, downtown investment and growth. And this is your fellow Glencoe citizens, the residents of the community saying, we need to invest in the downtown. We want it to be lively and thriving because that's going to make everything else happen. And in second place, a mix of housing options. Again, the schools are something really important. Parks, trails, etc. You have the results with you, but I just want to highlight that. A related item, with the question about, is there a need for more housing? Resoundingly, almost 3/4 saying, yes, there is a need for more housing. And then when people took the survey and if they answered yes, then a new question came up that asked them, If you answer yes, that the question doesn't show up for people who answer no. But for people who answer yes, what type of housing do you feel is needed? This is also very interesting. So of course we get single family homes, entry level single family homes. That's a really important priority. We've had conversations with the EDC about how really that is in some ways a barrier to the growth of some industry in town already. But also apartments, multifamily dwellings, townhomes, attached housing, that those two, I mean, if you were to lump those together as a category, they are also a major category. And even in their, separately, they are important components. And you can see as well, I won't go through every category here, but, senior housing, affordable housing, single family housing of different types. But that there is a recognition that there is need for more apartments, multifamily dwellings in the community. Type of services needed. And I should maybe go back here. You can see retail, restaurants, etc. Then we asked some questions about downtown specifically. How would you improve it? What is needed? Retail, shopping and services, restaurants are needed. That came through not only in this survey, but in the previous one as well. There's consistently, people want more of those services that in a way require more population to be supported. But so we want to do the things that invite more population into the community. Something else that I thought was really interesting is events and programming as something to draw visitors and make that feel of the downtown more thriving. And again, these are two very similar questions. Community events and programming and events are really the same, but sometimes it's helpful to ask questions in a different way so that people can think about it. And so what we're getting is clear indication that there is need for programming and events that draw people into the community. Now, that was not the whole survey. That's just an introduction. We'll come back to this in a minute, but I wanted to take a detour so that we didn't have John Petters waiting for us to go through the whole survey. And I know that his time is very valuable, and I didn't want to keep him on too long. So I'm gonna make a quick introduction to the downtown and some thoughts and ideas. And so this is part of our overall agenda for today. And John, as he mentioned, he works for a company. He's a developer for a company called Collegeville Companies and Brokerage. And I'll tell you how I met him. This is an aerial view of the city of St. Joseph. Now, I don't know how, I imagine that probably all of you have at one point or another traveled or been through St. Joseph. It's a city of about 7,000 people. If you were to look at an aerial of the city of Glencoe, they're about similar size when you look at it from that same perspective. This is their downtown. And of course, the College of St. Benedict is there. There's a lot of residences. There's proximity, it's within the metropolitan area of St. Cloud, etc. This is their downtown. And their downtown is really, there are two main streets in what's defined as the downtown, College Avenue and Minnesota Street. And, they're, I don't know what people call it, their $1,000 corner or their $1 million corner would be this right there at that intersection. And I imagine, of course, I'm no expert, but I would imagine that for downtown, we might say the same thing about, 11th and Hennepin in Glencoe, that might be 100% corner or like the downtown is. So I was in St. Joseph in 2017 or so, working for the city of St. Joseph with our team on their comprehensive plan. And I was adopted a couple of years ago. It was wonderful. We had a great time working in the community. And one of the things that really, to me, was an amazing find and an amazing discovery was having the chance to meet John and to meet somebody who is so excited about development in downtown areas. Because I'll tell you, when you go to any community, anybody can find a downtown developer. Anybody can find somebody who develops housing and mixed use in downtowns. if you're talking downtown Minneapolis, downtown New York City, downtown San Francisco. It is much more rare to find somebody who develops downtown housing, commercial, retail, mixed use in a downtown rural Minnesota or a small Minnesota community. I'll be honest with you, I haven't met anybody before John who is doing it and doing it successfully. So, and I got so excited, I got thirsty. 1 second. So when I met John, I thought, oh my goodness, I have to talk to this gentleman and have some of his knowledge and expertise go to other communities, because the same as in Glencoe, most communities in Minnesota and in other states as well, but in the work that I've done in Minnesota, everybody wants their downtown to be more thriving. Everybody wants the downtown to bring people in. Everybody wants more retail. Everybody wants more restaurants. Everybody wants more events and a more kind of convivial and kind of like an urban experience within, while still respecting the quality of that community, that it's a family-oriented town. It's not an expensive town, but we want to have a downtown that is healthy, like downtowns used to be. Where people are thinking, 60 years ago, downtown was healthy, was thriving. It's different now because things have spread. So what I was excited about is that, and the way that I learned about John is, so I got to downtown St. Joseph, walking around and kind of looking at the city. And I see this block that is newly built, combination of, it's a 2-story building, commercial in the bottom, residential in the top. It looks like this. It was clearly a newer building. It looked like it was fully occupied. It was thriving, nicely detailed, with a lot of connection between the residential spaces and the street. So you have liveliness spilling out and interconnecting between the inside and the outside. A place that is actually, they have these festivals in St. Joseph, where it's really part of the backdrop for these community events, because it's right in the downtown. The businesses draw from that as well. It helps to increase wealth and prosperity in that community. This is a view of one of the apartments inside. So nice places, nicely appointed. And with this fantastic restaurant that has an open patio right onto the 100% corner. Bello Cucina is, there's a couple of them around. This is a view of the patio. But with that idea of bringing people into the heart of the community, having a place that residents can go and enjoy, but also that draw people in from adjoining communities. This is a view of the inside of that Bello Cucina restaurant. It's a restaurant, so I got to show you a picture of some of the food. Here's some delicious pasta. So very successful restaurant. It's been there, as I understand it, from the time that it opened. And so that already was wonderfully exciting to me. And I said, I got to talk to the developer and connect them to the other communities with whom I work. When I talked to John and we were preparing for today, he said, you got to show them a picture of how it is that we were able to communicate the idea of what we were aiming to do. And so this is from his architect, just a rendering of kind of the feel that they wanted to do as they were developing this in downtown St. Joseph. So all of that is very exciting. But then something else happened as my time in St. Joseph, as we were finishing the project there, something else went up just about half a block north of that restaurant. And I saw it was like the signs for construction, and I could see a structure going up. And it turns out that John built a second building in the downtown of St. Joseph. That's also a mixed use and a residential development. And this is, the architect's vision of 24 North, which is lofts and commercial in the bottom. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. it's built. So it's not just a drawing anymore. It's built, it's open. This is what it looks like. And you know, you can see that the windows just got installed, and so they got all the stickers in them and so on. Uh, and it's just opening up. But now a place has opened here, and it's a restaurant. So they got, you know, commercial spaces on the bottom. They have 2 floors of residential above. It's a beautiful. I haven't been there yet, you know, because of the pandemic and all of this. But it is a New Orleans restaurant that's been written about in the New York Times, and it's a Minnesota chef and his wife, and this is what it looks like. And you can tell this is a Corona era picture. Everybody's wearing the face masks. You can see this is what it looks like inside. That's what the food looks like. Gumbo and jambalayas and all of the other wonderful elements of New Orleans. So I thought, well, this gentleman, John Petters, must know something that needs to be shared with the world. And now that I'm working with you all on this comprehensive plan for the community, and that we are receiving very clear guidance, request, desire from the community about what needs to happen, what people would like to see in downtown. I thought it's the perfect time to chat with John, to bring him here and to have an exchange. Maybe he can tell us. John, I hope you can tell us a little bit about your path, your experience, a little bit about how you were able to make such a development work, or such 2 developments work in downtown. If you have any tips for us to bring other developers, or to work with the developers we have in the community, so that they can get excited about doing this as well. And you know, what the outcome has been. What have those developments done for St. Joseph? Have you been able to, as a developer, recoup your investment? Are you able to stay in business doing such business? And is it beneficial, you know, personally from kind of a business standpoint, and then what it does for the community overall? So that's a lot of questions. I talked too much. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will let John talk. And please, John, if you need me to show any image or anything else, let me know. And everybody, please do use the chat. Put in your questions, and we'll have a wonderful session here today with John.
Okay. How's that microphone?
More or less, but you know, we'll turn it up. And
okay, I can change to a different one.
no.
That better?
Hey, that seemed
better?
a little, yes.
Okay, all right. I'm really a rookie at this, so thanks for having me. It's really interesting working in a small town. One thing is, I should say that early on, my interest was in developing housing for older people in college towns, and we had done a bunch of research about you know, what do older people like, and the big thing was they like life, they like activity. They had in some of the focus groups we did, which were really interesting, people said things like, I want a coffee shop that I can go in and listen to conversations, and I want to, you know, and it was interesting. So the big thing was, you know, they wanted vitality and life. I'm really a rookie developer, and if I ever do another development, I think my dear wife Colleen's going to divorce me. But this has been, it's satisfying at this point. How it started was, we were interested in doing there's a college here, the College of St. Benedict, and we were very interested in doing some housing next to it. We had done a development in Northfield downtown and one in Winona, college towns. And one thing about being a developer and being away from something, it's very difficult, because if you're going to have something that's about the soul of a town, you really got to kind of be there. And so I live, you know, 7 or 8 miles away, And doing something in the town where I live made a huge difference as opposed to having an out-of-town person coming in and doing something. The president of the college, when we were talking to them about doing a development for senior housing in town, which we did do, it's about 2 blocks away, her response was, John, we can't do anything, and we need to make St. Joe a little more attractive if we're going to have people that want to live here. And she also meant that for attracting students to the college. And 22, 23 years ago, no, about 12 to 13 years ago, St. Joe had a couple of bars. It had some tumbleweed. It was okay, but it had a lot of great history, and it had some soul. And I think that's something that is, when I look at Glencoe too, you've got some history and you've got some soul. You actually have a downtown. There are so that was an attraction that we could do something in a town that had some good bones and some soul. And so I bought some land downtown St. Joe, and then we started looking at, I had a wonderful architect who did some of those drawings, like how are we going to put this together? How much does it cost? All of those kinds of things. And there were, a couple things. One was using tax increment financing definitely helped us. We had a smaller version development, but there was that prime corner that Antonio's been talking about. And when we used tax increment financing, we were able to expand it and make the project a little bit better. But the biggest challenge for a small-time developer was, how does the economics of this work? Because it all sounds great about having shops and all that, but how do we do it? And so I guess the biggest thing, if I was going to convey something, if you're going to do something in Glencoe, you need to have some things that really attract people. Because if you just, you got to have a start to it, something that brings people there. It's got to be a restaurant or a shop or something. And what happened here was the college fortunately said, we'll open up this boutique gift shop and we'll make an investment because we want downtown to be better. And they did, and it was quite an amazing, it wasn't just a normal gift shop, but we had people coming from the Twin Cities and coming from all over. They really invested in it. And that was key to bringing people. And then we had a empty space for a restaurant, and we waited, and it was right 2009. I mean, it was 2010, it was a bad time to be in development. And we had a couple of chain sub shops, and we had a chain coffee shop, and we had, a few franchise type places that wanted to come in. And then somehow we lucked out and we met the owner of Bella Cucina, which is a locally owned. He had about 6, and then after some issues with his health, he cut it down to 2, and the 2 out of the 6 restaurants was St. Joe and Marshall. But anyhow, we got a locally owned restaurant that began to draw people to the area. Now the project, we had about, I think it was $400,000 in tax increment financing from the city. And that tax increment financing, which was something I wasn't familiar with, basically gave me some equity or some funding that I could count as part of my equity. And it was not, the city was getting very little taxes on the property. It was mostly vacant, and there was a laundromat there. So the city had no financial risk in giving this tax increment financing, which is very important. But the revenues from the increased real estate taxes, 90% of it would go to pay back this funding that I had. So that's kind of a shortened version of how it worked. So that helped tremendously, to do that. We, the residential upstairs was easy to fill. The main floor is always the challenge with a downtown development. And so when we started out, we actually opened, I put my office there. I I've since moved out. I'm in the other building. And we put in a yoga studio and some other things. Since we started, what happened, the Italian restaurant is there. They have expanded. They took over the area that the college had. We had an eye doctor who's been in there. We also have another psychologist that's been in there. And our yoga studio was taken over by a brew pub, Bad Habit. And that's a really interesting story. They started out with about 1,800 square feet, and they were in our building for about 3 years. And they were so successful, they have now built a space right across from us that's about 4 times as big as what they were. It used to be the old city hall. And that is an enormous draw to St. Joe, is the Bad Habit restaurant, the Italian place. We had the college store, which was a big draw. And so we've seen things spin off and develop. Where Bad Habit is now opened up in the middle of the COVID in November, is an ice cream shop that is really becoming a big draw. And they opened in November, ice cream. And they're doing well. And they're going to be, they had a few really nice days in November where people were actually sitting outside eating ice cream. So we've seen a flurry of activity that has come, but you had to have that impetus of something that draws people. Now, whether it's in an existing building you have in Glencoe or, what it is, but you want to get something new that brings people there. And that's really going to be the hard part. Doing the tax increment financing and all those, that can all be done. Getting people that want to invest in downtown Glencoe is going to be the biggest challenge. And so the other things that we had after I did the first development, which you saw, was going well. There was this property around the corner, and I somehow got into it. My architect said, "Hey, I'll do some drawings for you for free if you do this, whatever. Let's develop something in the alley." And it kind of got going, and we ended up doing something a little bit different. The residential was not a problem, 2 floors of residential, but the bank said, "You know what? You've got to have a strong commitment for the main floor, which is 1/3 of the development." And he said, "If they'd let you put a little bit of residential in the main floor, we can make it work. You don't need a commitment for this other space. We would, have enough." So we have 3 units that are on the main floor in St. Joe. I know that's not typical in a, to have downtown main floor, but we do have 3, and that did help us get a little more residential in there, which is a little bit easier to do. We then, just by word of mouth, and people knew we were looking for somebody who was not a franchise. And there was a couple that was in Spicer, New London area that had opened up a restaurant. They were from the Twin Cities. They wanted to move to a small town, and they were doing quite well there. And we met them, and that was always their dream, to open a New Orleans restaurant. So long and the short of it, and it was actually longer than short, we got them to come here. Restaurants are a difficult thing to do, but it's been pretty fascinating because they were featured in the New York Times. They were on BBC. They've had a ton of press all over, which brings people to St. Joe. So we have that restaurant there now, and we have our housing, which is pretty much full. We have, we're starting to have some turnover, like we've had, but we have, what's interesting is when we did an informal survey on my own before I started the second building, about 70% of the people coming into our first building were from outside of St. Joseph. They were coming from St. Cloud. They were coming from Sartell. They were coming from other areas to go to the gift shop, to go to the Italian restaurant, to go to the brew pub. So we had a lot of people coming to the town because St. Cloud's big, St. Joe's small. People loved the small town feel. People just felt very comfortable. And so getting a draw, I think is something that brings people there is probably your biggest challenge, to do. Let's see here. I guess that's kind of, what I've done. Financially, extremely risky, hard to do, a lot easier to do if you can get somebody who wants to invest in a business that would be in your downtown. And if you can help them, whether it's building a new building for them and having a developer do that or whatever, but getting something attractive that's popular and people like to come to. I guess the other thing that I would conclude with is, and I've mentioned this to Antonio, is a downtown is kind of the soul, and there are towns that would love to. You go to Maple Grove, very successful big box development. Okay, that's not small town. We have big box here. We have a Colburn's and we have some other big stores. There was a grocery store in downtown St. Joe. It's gone. There's a big Colburn's. Now there's a food co-op where the grocery store used to be. So downtowns fit well, and they kind of provide that identity for a little town. And so that's a very valuable thing in many ways for housing, attracting people to come there, families to stay there, etc. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
I'm going to first say, John, thank you so much for that tour and that history, and for sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have that was very helpful. I have a couple of questions to share with you. And of course, everybody, please feel free to chat, or just directly ask John. But I have a question that Mayor Voss typed in just a few minutes ago. Are the residential units, are they market rate, senior, or subsidized type apartments? And if you can tell us that for both Millstream and 24 North, that would be helpful, John.
They're both market rate. And the interesting thing is the mix of people that we have. And if I go between the two buildings right now, we have a 3-month-old, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and we go all the way on up to people in their 80s. We have a wonderful mix. This is a college town. You might think, oh, you just have all students. Absolutely not. We have maybe 1 or 2 students in the whole place. So it's a mixture, and it's market rate. It is, I will say, because of building costs, it is the most expensive housing in the area. This type, and we did balconies on all the buildings, real balconies. They're enough area that you can go and sit out there. It's expensive to do. I would say it's enjoyable space. When people see it, they like it. Always hard to do something before it's done, or to sell something when people can't walk inside and see it. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for John? Well, we haven't. Oh, here's another question from BJ. Was your development part of a comprehensive plan? Did you approach the city, or did the city contact you?
I approached the city. It was actually, yeah, it was. I think it became part of the. I mean, it was a little easier, and it was pretty. I don't know. It wasn't part of the comprehensive plan.
And I should say, just to follow that, so when John began doing this work, we were not even
no, you weren't
working. Yeah, so that the comprehensive plan. Yeah, so we came after, and so in our comprehensive plan, there is discussion of future development of housing and commercial in the downtown. But that opens up to a really important question. I think oftentimes in most comprehensive plans and in most planning efforts in smaller communities throughout Minnesota, the downtown is kind of an aspiration, but there's really very little mechanism or orientation for how to make it happen. And so that's why for me and for our team, it was so key, so important to bring John into the conversation with all of us today, because we want to really emphasize, knowing the key role, as John said, the downtown is the soul of a community. And communities that have a downtown are incredibly fortunate. They have they have a chest full of gold that they're sitting on. And oftentimes they don't even know that that chest is full of gold. They just think, well, I'm just sitting on this chest and it's comfortable. What we want to bring into the plan is we want to work with you to open up that chest and see, hey, look at all this gold you got there. And it's part of kind of what can be the engine that drives the change that you want to see in Glencoe. And so, it's not the only option, it's not the only solution, it's not the only place where housing needs to be addressed. It's not the only type of housing that the city needs, but it really can play a key role in the future of the community. So the comprehensive plan is a place where we can make a really concerted and intentional effort to encourage, I would say John, except that he's told me, I'm done with developing. I've had enough fun already, and it was too hard. So I think he is not, so it's not for him, but it's for other developers who may have a hard time imagining what could be possible in a downtown. In Minnesota, we don't have a lot of experience developing this kind of housing in downtowns. There just isn't.
It may not be a developer. It may be somebody from your community that's very interested in doing it, and perhaps there are some local investors. But I think it's really wonderful to have somebody who really is going to be around and has something in it. Their name's attached to it, and that's a big driver, to do that.
I have a couple of other questions that came in, and I just want to note them. So the next question is from Merritt. I really like the balcony design because it brings residents into the public space and makes it feel more like a community and neighborhood. It's people that give the downtown its soul, she writes. And then as a follow-up, have you retained ownership of the properties?
Balconies, yes. And in some of our initial work that we did with focus groups and stuff, the idea of people being able to watch what's going on, it was a really big thing. I mean, that just, and it's fun to look up there and see stuff. The first pictures you saw the building, there was nothing in it, but right now there's all sorts of still Christmas lights, and there's all sorts of different things out there that just shows activity. So that, yes. And then ownership, yes, I have retained ownership in both of them. I have a business partner who owns the other half, and got involved as an investment. And I do plan to continue with that.
Very good. Thank you, John. I have another comment to share. It's something that you mentioned that I think is also something that doesn't really get talked about very much. It's the idea that there is a certain type of person called developer, and they're, of course, unique and individual, but they're, it's like being a lawyer or being a doctor. You have to have some kind of training and resources and experience to be a developer. And something that you said, I thought was very interesting just now, where you said, it doesn't have to be a developer from outside. It can be somebody from the community who is interested in making something and has access to some funds. So I wonder if you could chat a little bit about what you see as, who could be a developer in Glencoe. Do they have to be a developer already?
Oh, so there are builders, okay? And a lot of builders that have been maybe working, multi-states or throughout the state of Minnesota are familiar with tax increment financing. They've maybe built hotels, maybe they've done housing and stuff like that. That's finding someone like that can really help guide somebody through the process of developing something. And so there are a lot of people that know a lot of stuff. And in St. Joe, we used two different contractors. One we were really happy with, the other one we were not as happy with, but they both provided a value and some guidance. Local companies. One was sold to an out-of-state company, and the local company was fantastic. We really liked that. And I'm not familiar with who you have in Glencoe, but somebody, there are builders, I'm sure, that would be available, contractors to do that. So, there are ways of putting things together. If you have somebody who is interested in investing and you can find a good builder, it can be put together. And that's the magic of how that happens, how TIF works and all that. That's something I think where the city can be helpful in saying, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to create this investment. You need to create a pro forma. You need to create, all of that and kind of put it together. Can be done. And I think a good builder is someone who can help with that. And I'm not a builder.
Any other questions? I know that, I don't know if we'll be able to have John joining us again for these conversations in the future. So if you have any questions that you'd like to share, I would say and encourage all of us, now is the time to speak up or type them in the chat. I can read them off to John. I want to make sure we all have a chance to get our questions answered.
I was just going to make a comment that over the history of the, since late 1970s when tax increment became possible, the city has established 19 tax increment districts. The most recent was Panther Heights. So it's not something we're unfamiliar with, and we have done. There are only four existing tax increment districts. We just decertified one downtown, but it's something we've done in the past and are very familiar with.
So the city has the experience, has the know-how to be able to set up another TIF district if a developer is interested in the downtown, and the city is able to help out with that financing. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, I would think so. Yep.
One question related to the previous TIF districts, any of them in and around the downtown area previously?
The original tax increment district was a pre-79 district, and it was in the downtown. We actually did street reconstruction and sidewalks and things like that in the mid-90s before it got decertified. And then we just decertified a district over by Nelson Photography and Southwest Eye Care. We purchased a bunch of old buildings, and we had three new buildings built in that district. But that just got decertified this last month, I think, because we had no debt left on the district. But we've been in the downtown before.
Very good. Thank you. I want to read a comment that Merritt just submitted. It might be interesting to consider having the city as the investor and owner. Cities sometimes do that as a catalyst to build confidence in the market and attract private investors for the next projects. Any responses from John or from anybody here in the steering committee about that idea?
What's interesting, Ryan and I just had that conversation this morning. It's been done in other communities. Just down the road, Norwood Young America did some housing and a relocation of their city hall, and I think they've got a office for the sheriffs. And I think Waconia has done a similar project in their downtown.
Thank you, Mark. Merritt, would you like to say anything more about that idea or some of your perspectives on that, or maybe just general questions from John's information that he's shared today?
No, not really anything to add. I just think it's something to consider. If the city is doing the project, it has more influence over the tenants it's bringing to the table. And it, as John said, the banks can be conservative, and risk they're willing to take. And for instance, typically they want to see franchise stores in mixed use buildings, and he was able to work around that by putting residential on the ground floor. And some of the projects I can think of, the market was really wary about whether the investment would pay off. And so the city did these sort of seed projects. And then often they just decide then after a little bit of time to sell it, because they're not really, real estate investors over time. And so they not only got the catalyst, but they got a little profit off the project. So if you do have any wherewithal to do it, I think it's a really interesting thing to consider. And John, I don't know when it first came up, you kind of smirked. So I'm curious what that was.
Oh, no, I think it's definitely an idea to pursue. I think, catalyst is really critical. And then eventually selling it is an option. Anytime you have a governmental body or a college, it's obviously a little harder to move quickly. But if the city is interested, I think it's well worth pursuing. I think you'd be better off if you had some local investors that wanted to do it. But I think it's worth pursuing. Only reason I smirked probably was I have done things with the college and the city at the same time, and it's difficult, and actually more difficult. City of St. Joe was actually phenomenal in our whole thing, and the city administrator who we had, Mark, I'm happy to hear that you've already done stuff like that. They were critical a lot of times, just saying, why don't you talk to this person, or why don't you talk to that person? Very helpful, very, very helpful.
Thank you. Let me see, there's another comment that came in from BJ. I think it is a good idea to spark more and show the commitment of the city to grow. So it sounds like here in the steering committee, that as we're meeting today, that there is some idea to pursue some of these potential options. That is great. Good. We're at 20 minutes out from the end of our meeting. If there's any other questions or comments you want to share with John, please speak up now, because otherwise we'll continue forward in the agenda.
Also, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm more than happy to talk with somebody. So I'll leave that out there. And thanks very, very much for having me here. And have some fun with it. And your town has a downtown. It's got some soul, and it'll be fun to see what happens.
Thank you so much, John. I will make sure to share your contact information. Then I wanted to ask you, I know that you said you're retiring from development and all of this, and so I didn't want to fill your plate up, but I will share your contact information then with folks after our meeting, and I'm sure you're going to get a few more calls from me also, especially because I want to keep chatting about this with you. I think what you bring is just so valuable and such a huge part of what a lot of cities are looking for. So thank you for making time to join us today and for all the knowledge you have shared and the optimism about the future. So, oh wait, I think your microphone is off, John.
Thank you, and I'm going to let you continue your meeting. And again, if anyone needs wants to talk or chat, or you having a crazy idea, because that's the kind of stuff that I did that almost was tough to do, but the result was great. You're welcome to come here. If you're coming to St. Joe, I'll be happy to show you around a little bit.
Oh, and that's a great tip. If you have a trip to the area anytime soon, I super highly recommend going to St. Joseph, going to that intersection and taking a look at Bello Cucina and Crew, and see the buildings. It's new stuff that was built. It's doable. It's possible, and it's what was something that I like that John was able to share is that it builds new opportunities and it incubates new businesses. Go ahead, John.
That's been really a great thing that's happened too, and it's even the eye doctor has expanded and done that. So it is a great incubator, and towns do it in different ways, whether it's the city or whatever. One last thing I was going to say is we had one little building that was a garage that was actually like a little barn, and it's on the site of the second project. It's only 700 square feet. We kept that, and it's down the alley, and that's a bakery right now. And we restored it. It's got gas lanterns on it, and that's been kind of a fun thing. I mean, because in all of our development, we did not take land from anybody. If there was any local businesses around there, all there, they've all done better. That's another thing is and that was a question where you're bringing in using tax increment financing, and you've got an Italian restaurant, what's it going to do? I think if you go around to the local bars and restaurants, you find out that they are all doing better. In fact, St. Joe compared to St. Cloud, in the last, the local newspaper, St. Cloud Daily Times, they have best coffee shop, best music, all that. We had about 7 of them within 2 blocks of downtown, which was kind of fun. And there's no reason Glencoe can't do that at all.
I like that. Thank you. And I like that thought too, that it's not about taking a little bit of the pie from somebody else to make, the new developments slice larger. It's, you can actually, in some ways, I mean, it sounds like magic, but you can actually grow the pie.
No, you can. And we have, like, the St. Joe Meat Market's been here forever. And you have those jewels of your town that you want to respect and they will do better. But It's really important to do that. So, all right, thank you. I'm gonna head out, and you guys all have a wonderful day, and good luck.
Thanks so much, John. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, that was a wonderful conversation, and I am going to, we had a couple of other comments come in. I'll just read them also so that when people who are watching the video later on, Merritt wrote, during the pandemic, it's been found that small independent businesses have had better staying power than chains. They have the flexibility to adapt and tend to be more in tune with the community. That's a great insight. Mayor Voss also wrote, I suggest members of the committee visit St. Joe, Norwood, or Waconia to see how these facilities look in the downtown settings. Another successful downtown revitalization with new residential multi-stories is in Victoria. They also have new restaurants, etc. That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Mayor Voss. Would you like to say anything more about that or no? Okay. All right. So I will now return us to our regularly scheduled programming. I'll share my screen again. Just one quick second. And let's go back to the presentation. And I'll share the contact information for John Petters after the meeting. Just be one quick second here. Okay, so here's, oops. I think we're having a little bit of trouble here. One second. I think my computer got a little bit too restful while we were listening to John. So let's see. Okay, and there's John. Ooh, all right. Are we on there? Can everybody see a picture of John? This is where we got into the presentation. And so I want to return a little bit to survey number 2, just to continue on that overview. Although before I do that, any other, I don't want to race ahead too fast. Does anybody feel like they want to chat a little bit more about what we just heard and about potential ideas? And we can continue the conversation through the steering committee mailing list as well. And you can send messages through the chat now, but if anybody feels like they want to say something, kind of just reflecting on what we just heard, please feel free to speak up. And
Just a question for Merritt. Would this require, I mean, if we're kind of go down this route, do we need to update our housing study? Or is that something that's going to come out of this plan?
Yeah, I've been looking at the housing study and reviewing it to consider elements that should be considered again or data updates. I think it still holds pretty well. And, you know, they talk somewhat about the housing in downtown, but yeah, I'm definitely taking a look. And also I'm looking at what's coming in through the surveys and where people's interests are, so that we can investigate those items a little more.
Yeah. Thank you, Merritt. Thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments before we return to the next parts of our meeting? Anybody else? Just go ahead and speak up.
I just have one other comment too, just to let everyone know, we are in discussions right now with Panther Heights on a second phase, about 36 units of
Wow.
housing. So, and we couldn't have got that done without the housing study.
Wonderful. Wonderful. That's great. And that's part of the usefulness of planning, right? And getting some of these documents in line, because it helps make life easier for the next things to occur. That's a great job. I'm glad you guys did that study. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago now, right? Yeah, great. Anybody else? Okay. So I'm going to return to some of just a quick overview of Survey 2. Just to give you, we were talking, so some of the other questions, and again, I'm not going through every single question, but just highlights, types of employment and jobs that people are seeking for the community. They want to have more retail and service jobs, manufacturing, assembly and warehousing, you know, that's an important component. And so thinking about the current industrial base that you have and thinking about the benefit that it brings in providing jobs to community members and maybe helping to increase the operations of these different firms right now. Startup entrepreneurship, this is a really oftentimes an untapped resource, an untapped opportunity in a lot of communities. And so the fact that this is coming up as something that people are thinking about, I think there are many ways that the comprehensive plan can help articulate some strategies for the city to play a kind of a leading role in incubating small businesses. How important is it for the city to help support training or development for local entrepreneurs? 30% very important, 25% very important, 35% somewhat important. So about 90% of people think there is some role, there ought to be some role in the city helping to make entrepreneurship happen. And so, you know, we have an economic development chapter that we're putting together for the comprehensive plan. So entrepreneurship and kind of how to support that, how to grow the businesses that you have in town already, how to help them expand, grow their operation, but then also how to bring people who have not had a business yet. What do they need to do in order to be able to start up? A little bit to chat about transportation, and this may be kind of like a general overview of directions that the community is interested in. You know, the number one set of choices have to do with maintaining existing, you know, what is on the ground today in terms of infrastructure and roads before building new, just kind of bringing a level of maintenance to a certain level. Oops. And I believe something just happened with my camera, but I'm still connected, right? I mean, John, give me a thumbs up if, okay, good. I don't know what happened. Oh, well. Okay, so transportation goals, maintaining existing roadways, addressing safety at intersections. The third priority, making the city more walkable and pedestrian friendly. We had a number of questions related to the different facilities people might encounter in town, especially when we're having conversations about potentially any reconstruction of roads when they are due or building new roads. So here you see an image of a sidewalk adjacent to a travel lane. And you can see how we ask people, select your comfort, how comfortable being in this space as a pedestrian will feel to you. And you could say, very many people felt pretty comfortable, some uncomfortable. If we build in a boulevard, if we include a boulevard as part of that equation, then you can see how that kind of feeling of comfort within that facility, how that jumps. And so that's also something to keep in mind. For bicycling, this is an interesting set of images. And of course, in real life, things would look a little bit different, but these are meant to be kind of generic images that let people just answer based on their specific preferences. In this case, a lot of people would not use this facility at all. You can see by that large red bar, I would not even get my bike out. I would not be on this, or I would feel very uncomfortable. And then as you begin to add, for example, a bicycle lane, those numbers, you can see the contrast between this and this. You have to make that space on the roadway, but then you end up getting a little bit more use with people that would feel okay using this facility. And now if you begin to have some separation where you might have, you see this bollards, and these are very inexpensive plastic bollards that are placed with some delineation and paint, then you can see how this facility then is able to, it feels more comfortable to more people. The number who would not ride decreases. And what we're, in general, when we're talking about bicycling and pedestrian connectivity, we want to invite people to a facility by having that facility feel comfortable so that they actually do use it and are able to move themselves about within the community. The gold standard, of course, is a trail, and that's you can see how that evolves. Now, something that is interesting between this facility and the previous one is that although the very dark green bar, very comfortable, is much higher here, they are not too different if you were to sum up comfortable and very comfortable between both of them. So in some ways, you end up getting kind of a similar kind of outcomes, but of course, the cost is quite a big difference between them. The trail, which is the ideal facility to build, but it costs about almost $3 million a mile versus this facility on the right, which is not as good as the trail, but it's pretty good. You can get that built, for around $50,000 a mile. And so in some of the pedestrian and bicycle recommendations that we'll be making will be, where it makes sense and where there's space and where we can make that recommendation. Likely we'll have a few of these projects that are lower cost as the recommended option. Just very quickly to go through some of the final components of the survey of again, this brief summary. Park elements or amenities, so now we're talking about parks. Trails is the #1 request, and by by about 25 percentage points that people are requesting, are wanting more trails in the community. And then the other ones are of course also very important: active sports, play equipment, natural areas, etc. We're going to be taking this information with our plan. Again, we are looking, and the plan is going to recommend not only physical facilities, but also programs. And so here you can see that, some of the really key interest for people are some active adult fitness classes by quite a bit, 20 points or so, Zumba, etc. And then some of the other activities that people might consider. So we are continuing to collect that information here as well. And now here for the question that everybody is curious about, the internet service. And you saw it in the survey. I mean, it's really pretty clear. Does the internet service you currently use meet your needs? You can see 2/3 of residents, of respondents, are saying no, it does not meet my needs. For those people who answered that it didn't meet their needs. We asked them, is this the internet that you use at your home? Is it the internet that you use at your work location? Or is it at both locations? And you can see that overwhelmingly, well, 88 people is the residential, plus the 8% as well that would be here. So 90-some percent of the people are having trouble with the residential connection. And business location, not so many respondents selected that. We asked people about their internet service provider, if they indicated that they had an issue with connectivity, and if one of those locations was the residence. And you can see that both of your providers, I mean, it's they're seeming to have about equal, of course not equal, but very similar levels of dissatisfaction with the service. So this may point out that it may be not so much the provider as to maybe some of the the data mainline that they are both using to connect their services. There may be some other issues at play, but both of the main providers seem to be pretty significantly affected. And so I know that there are some conversations going on at the city level now about this with the providers. There may be room, there may be need within the comprehensive plan to address this and to make some recommendations related to, for example, overall the fiber optic network that is in this part of the state may need some updating. I know that I only have a couple more minutes left. Let me see if I can share just a couple more slides, and I'll try to be quick. Something that is key for us is reaching as many people as we can, as many Glencoe citizens as we can with this work. What is the most effective way to reach people? We asked the question, well, how did you hear about the plan? More than 70% said through Facebook and Twitter. So if all of us in the project steering committee can use your Facebook to send out reminders about the survey, to send out information about the plan, that's the most effective tool according to what people are telling us. We have some demographic questions in the survey to allow us to know if we're doing a good job reaching the community or not. Fairly reasonably, we're connecting with men and women in the community. Age ranges, you can tell that we are, the 18 to 24 range, we're missing some connection with that community. We're also missing some connection with people under 18, with your students today. And so we're working with the city to try to figure out how we can connect. And I think I'll be connecting with Councilmember Lemke to talk about some opportunities with the school district as well. But you can see that we are getting a good number of people in this 25 to 34 range. So young families, people raising their kids, we want to know what they want in the community because we want them to stay and we want them to continue to grow their families here. We want to know also what people who are retired are looking for. So this gives us a clue as to some of the other networks that we need to connect with. Ethnic, cultural, we're getting some participation from members of the Hispanic community and other communities as well. We have a Spanish language effort. I've been chatting with Luz Duval, who's in our steering committee, a little bit about some next steps working with the church. Finally, for demographics, we have our income picture. And I think that right now, there's a lot more we can do to go to reach people who are at 50,000 annual income and below for the household. I think that there's opportunity to do that. So we might have to get some creative ideas on how to reach those populations. Let's see, I'm looking at the clock. It's 1:01, so I think that may exceed our time. So I'm going to stop here for now, and I'll share information with you. I think after this, let me see if I can turn my camera back on at least for a minute. I don't know what happened at it. Oh, there I am again. Okay, I came back. Can you see me? Okay, good, 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 good. Okay, so, well, I guess maybe I'll show you this one. We're in March. We're finishing up vision, goals, and policies right now. That's why it's so critical that we finish the survey portion of the work, and we are on good track to doing that at the end of this month. And we are in the kind of intense part of the work. We're in the kitchen. We're putting the soup and the stew and the salad and making the ice cream, churning it by hand. But it's going to be a wonderful, delicious meal at the end. So with that, I think maybe I will stop sharing my screen. And woof, we're 2 minutes over schedule. Before we go, any questions? I know it was a lot of content and a lot of information today. Any questions? Any final thoughts? Feel free to speak up or send a text message. Anybody? Okay, the 7 seconds have elapsed, I think so. I will say that, well, I guess we don't have any questions. I am grateful for your time and effort and attending today. John, it looked like you were going to say something. Were you? John Roderberg.
No, just we are working pretty extensively on infrastructure, filling out the chapters right now. So we may be talking with some of you as part of that. We'll be meeting with city staff and others. So keep your eyes out if we have requests for information. But there's a lot of data being compiled, and it's been fun getting through this, and having the survey really kind of helps us focus. So again, appreciate everybody's feedback.
Thank you for that, John. Merritt, I wonder, anything you'd like to say before we go?
No, nothing to add. I found the presenter today really interesting, and lots of lots of things to think about. So it's exciting. I get excited thinking about what can be happening in Glencoe. So
wonderful. Anybody else would like to say anything before we adjourn? I'll be in touch with the survey to ask you about your meeting preferences, and I'll send that out in a few minutes. The video for the meeting today will be up on the website tonight. And any parting thoughts, anybody? I don't hear anybody. Okay, I think that's 7 seconds. Okay, thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll be in touch.
thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.